Blind Date. Hello, our international fans of the radio program Blind Date. Here is Irma Jokstyte, and I am inviting you to another date where we are going to talk about different people, different our abilities, and even different ways of knowing each other and talking about the things. In our today's radio program, you are going to hear about Ruebain Center here in Vilnius, Lithuania, and about their new program in 2020. And today we have two guests from the United Kingdom. It is program coordinator in Ruebain Center, Yates Norton, and internationally renowned disability rights activist David Ruebain. Hello, Yates.
Hi there. Hi.
How are you?
Very good today, yeah.
Could you please introduce us a bit the Center of Ruebain and the activity there?
Yes, of course. So Ruebain is a publicly funded arts and education centre in Vilnius. It's in Valicampe, about 11 kilometres from the centre. We have three programmes, which are the residency program, for which we're very well known internationally, and we have artists and practitioners in a range of fields come from all around the world to stay with us between 1 and 3 months throughout the year. Then we have an alternative education program, which is a program which lasts about 6 to 8 months and is predominantly for Lithuanian practitioners and artists, and they engage in a series of workshops and seminars over this 8-month period. And then we have the public programs, which I'm currently curating, which includes exhibitions, public talks, workshops and seminars. And this year they are guided by a set of themes around care and interdependence.
And how your work started here in Lithuania?
So I was kindly asked to come out to Lithuania almost exactly 2 years ago by the former director to join the team, and I was very happy to do so. I knew some artists who were based in Lithuania, and I had also seen how vibrant the cultural scene is in Lithuania and in Vilnius, and for me it was important to get to know that scene and to work closely with the artists and curators here.
We also have another guest from Ruebain, or guests of Ruebain, I would say, who kindly agreed to take part in our program and our discussion too. Internationally renowned disability rights activist David Ruebain. Hello, David.
Hello, thank you.
It's your second time in Lithuania, right?
It is, yes. I came about 18 months ago.
Okay, and what do you know already about Lithuania? How do you feel here?
Well, first of all, how beautiful it is. I really only know Vilnius. I haven't had an opportunity of seeing outside, unfortunately, but it's a very beautiful city and with a very vibrant scene, a very vibrant life, cultural and night and sort of social scene here. It's lovely.
Oh, thank you so much. Today our topic is quite complicated, disability and solidarity. David, how you are engaged to this topic yourself?
Well, I've been an activist in one form or another in the area of disability rights probably for the last 40 years or so. And in that time, my interests or my focus has changed. So for many years I was an activist campaigning for legal rights for disabled people, anti-discrimination rights. Then I was a lawyer, and so I litigated. I took cases in the area. And then afterwards I became more interested in what strategic initiatives and policies can make a real difference. But now, more recently, I have become especially interested in the idea and practice of allyship, of what it means for people from different backgrounds to be as committed to each other and to each other's liberation. So young and old people and people from different countries and disabled and non-disabled people, and all of the other ways in which people may have different experiences.
30, 40 years working or being quite close to the processes of disability rights, how this law is changing in Europe in general, what can you tell?
Well, in many ways, I think there has been significantly a transformation So I was born in England in the 1960s. And at that time, there were no real anti-discrimination legislation or laws. All of the laws relating to disabled people were focused on welfare or support in some way or other. But really, there was no recognition or understanding of disability as an issue of oppression or of discrimination. And that has all changed significantly through campaigning work in many countries by disabled people and their allies, so that now people may not agree about how strong our laws are, but we have, to one extent or another, substantial anti-discrimination laws across Europe and actually in many parts of the world as well. In the UN, United Nations passed the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which is a civil rights convention, an anti-discrimination convention. And I think the majority of countries around the world have adopted it in one form or another. So I don't say that it's enforced everywhere, it probably isn't. But at least in terms of a change in understanding, that has been transformative, in my view, over the last 40 or 50 years.
Okay. So Yates, this year the new program is running for interdependence and care. Could you please introduce more about the program and what topics this program is going to touch?
Mm-hmm. So for our public programs this year, we decided to give them, I don't want to use the word theme because that suggests that it's just a topic that lasts a year. And for us, the ideas and practices of care and interdependence, I think, are crucial for long-term engagement. But so we've decided to arrange the public programs around these questions of care and interdependence for several reasons. One is that I have seen how an ideology of individualism and competition has taken over how we think about our relationship to other people and also to the environment. So, for instance, the idea of success that we have today is very much based on the idea that my success is based on your failure. Or in order to value something, it has to take place in some kind of competition. You see that on the TV all the time. So things that should just be enjoyable for their own sake, such as dancing or cooking or singing, have been turned into competitions in order to be valued. I think this is not a sustainable practice because ultimately it's not about working together, and it isn't about acknowledging how we all rely on other people and we all rely on the environment as well to varying degrees. And for me, what this word interdependence, why I've used it in these public programs, is because interdependence acknowledges this mutual responsibility and mutual support that we have between one another and our environment. And there is actually, particularly in South African philosophy, this concept of Ubuntu, which the Kenyan priest and theologian John Mbiti, he defines it as I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am. And for me, that's a very good definition of what interdependence is. The programs will explore interdependence and care from a variety of different perspectives, not just from the arts, even though we are in arts organisations. And it will also be grounded in disability rights, activism, scholarship and artistic practice, because through my conversations with David in particular, I think that perspective from disability opens up a lot of important questions about what interdependence and care can mean. So the kinds of people that we're bringing together, it involved people like David and Rahila Gupta, who spoke with David at the National Gallery on the 8th of February recently, and and then people who work in the arts, people who work in civil rights and human rights. And the idea is to raise a discussion about these questions over this year, which I hope will have a long-term impact, not just here in Vilnius, but also in Lithuania more generally.
Do you feel bigger need to raise these discussions, in Lithuanian society? Could you compare our, walked away talking or raising these type of discussions, for example, with Lithuania and maybe the UK?
That's a very good question, and something I'll want to address in the course of doing this program, because we will have international speakers but also local speakers exploring this issue. I'm relatively new to Lithuania, and so I'm myself still exploring it, but I think there are important questions about care and interdependence and disability rights here, and I see how there is a rising discussion about it, and especially when it comes to questions of access, institutionally in particular. So I think a lot of cultural institutions are starting to think about how we can think about access and how we can open up our institutions. In terms of why this might be an important discussion here, I think Lithuania, like many countries in Europe, they're pursuing an ideology. This isn't obviously the whole country, but of where competition and individualism are quite strong. And I think we need to constantly remind ourselves of the importance of community and collectivity. And I hope that these programs will explore community and collectivity from different points of view and really entrench it in the local situation.
David, coming back to the recent discussion in National Gallery of Arts, discussion was called "Talking about Solidarity and Disability," and it was first event of this huge program of Rupert. What is it important for you personally, talking about solidarity and disability?
Well, for me, there has been a historical narrative affecting disabled people that we are recipients of other people's charity or care or support. The disabled people should be passive and receive help, and therefore we will have the best lives that we can if we do that. But of course, that creates very negative power relationships. So disabled people become recipients, not able to offer anything. And of course, non-disabled people, or the people who are in relationship with disabled people, have a very particular role. And I and many disabled people I know have never been interested in that. We want to have fully connected human relationships like everybody else. And of course, care has had a particular meaning in the disability world, as has dependency. And it has become more and more clear to me that none of us are just dependent on other people. Any true relationship will be interdependent, that any real human connection will give as well as take on both sides. And that the kind of economic or political environment that Yates talked about, which tries to make us individualistic and always in competition with each other, is as problematic as a relationship where one person is giving and the other person is receiving. For me, my well-being as a person, whether I'm disabled or not, is interrelationship with the people around me, where we all give and we are all receiving.
But then talking about the help, right? The special needs in the society for people with disability.
Yeah.
What do you think would be the best help, or the most conscious help of the society for us, for disabled people, and also for other people who don't have any disability, but we all have some needs?
Sure. Well, it can be complicated because some disabled people and others may have very particular practical needs. But I'm convinced that it's damaging to them and to the provider of the help, even if it's willing, if it is only ever one way. I think there's something very damaging almost to the human soul if somebody can only rely on somebody else to receive something. I think we all need and want to engage in a profound way with each other so that we are able to offer as well. And in my case, I am disabled. I have a physical disability, so there are some things that I need help with in that area, and I probably am not very helpful in supporting other people physically, but there are many, many things that I can do, which I do. It's partly why I became a lawyer, because I was effective, hopefully, in my ability to support my clients. But I see this now, in this time of my life, especially important for me in my personal relationships with people. I don't want any relationships which are one way, and they don't have to be one way. And I think in many respects my guess is that's what we all want, even though some of us are hurt in a way which makes it harder for us to do that.
True. David, talking about solidarity and disability, you've introduced a social model. Could you please introduce it here?
Sure. So this was an idea that developed in a number of countries in the 1970s and the 1980s, mainly by disabled political activists, as a way of understanding oppression of disabled people and as a tool for liberation. So I'll briefly try and explain. Okay. Certainly in the West, the historic way of thinking about disability is in what we now call the medical model, or the tragedy model, or the charity model, which is that disabled people's problems are all to do with their medical condition, whatever it is, and that therefore the best response of society is to look after them and provide them with treatment to either cure them or hopefully prevent them ever becoming disabled, or if you can't, then help them manage as best as possible. What disabled people and others talked about in the social model was to separate out the experience of somebody's medical condition, blindness, cerebral palsy, whatever it is, from the way that society responds to that. So to give just a brief example, the reason why somebody who uses a wheelchair may be unemployed or doesn't have very accessible housing or maybe has no friends is nothing to do with the cerebral palsy or the reason that they are in a wheelchair, but only to do with how society has responded to that. And that is the social model. And therefore we separate out the experience of a medical condition, which is a personal matter, to society's response to it, which is a political matter. And the social model therefore calls for inclusion and civil and human rights for disabled people. And that was the new progressive or radical approach that the disability movement developed in the 1970s and 80s.
Yeah, it's really a very drastic change for us. And I liked also how you described equality and possibility of equality in capitalism.
Well, I think, different people will have different views. My own view is that it's harder, much harder, and maybe not possible to have true equality. And the word capitalism means different things to different people. But what I will say is under a very hyper-competitive environment in the way that Yates described earlier. I think disabled people can succeed in some areas. But the problem is I think that, well, I'll speak for myself. I flourish, I can do best in cooperation with other people. And so if the push is for me to compete with them, I won't do as well.
And Yates, concluding with the program of interdependence and care, we meet now when the very beginning stage is happening. Maybe we'll meet once again after the program. Yes. And what would you call a success of the program? What would be the biggest wish for you to achieve with this program and discussions?
Yeah, it's a good question because in many ways this program is it's about raising a discussion and also perhaps raising consciousness of these issues and also thinking about disability about a civil rights issue and a political issue that affects us all. I think what the programme is able to do, and specifically what a cultural institution can do, is that it can provide a platform for different people to come together and for different perspectives to come together and to explore those different perspectives and actually maybe not even come to a conclusion. I think what the arts, the capacity of the arts, which I think makes the arts such an interesting and important a place, is that the arts are able to hold contradictions and ambivalences in play. It's not necessarily about finding a solution to everything. It's about bringing up conversations and difficult conversations too. In terms of the success of what I and all of us involved in, I hope we can achieve, is to, I think here in Vilnius, because that's the context that I'm working in, is to build more inclusive environments, and both on an institutional level, but also perhaps in terms of individual artists' practices or other people's practices, to build in sustainable ways of working which really emphasize the importance of cooperation, that acknowledges how interdependence is a fundamental part of all our lives, whether that's in our working lives or elsewhere. Because I think this kind of ideology of individualism and competition, it can only lead to a certain point, and it will only result in the success of a few people and not in more people, and more people working together in a good and sustainable way.
And who would you invite to take part in the events, and where we can find the information?
The people that we're inviting will include Oliver Mould is our next speaker. He's a scholar, and he writes about creativity and how creativity has been co-opted by this particular social and economic system that we're living in, which has been characterized as neoliberalism, and how it's been co-opted to further individualism rather than contribute to ideas about collectivity and collaboration. And then we'll have a number of other talks, also in Lithuanian, over the coming year, which will include artists and curators and writers. But to find out more, I would go to our website, where you can also subscribe to our newsletter. And then I know Facebook is a big thing in Lithuania, so you can go on Facebook and we'll post things there, and on Instagram too. And for those of you who can't come physically to some of our events, they'll take place in different sites, not just at Ruebain. We'll also upload transcriptions or videos or recordings onto our website, so that would be a way that you can access it too.
Thank you guys for your work, and I wish you best luck in all that program.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.